Will that stop at any minute and start to beep? All right. All right. We're shooting in 3.
First off, before we get into everything, tell me who you are.
Good morning. My name is Stanley Thomas. I'm a deputy sheriff for LA County Sheriff's. Been working for the Sheriff's Department for 15 years.
And you?
And my name is Harold Haywood, but everybody knows me as Muhammad.
Right. So, how did you guys meet?
Working out at 24 Hour Fitness in Compton some years ago, and while I was working out, I noticed this young man. He was working out, and he kind of looked at me and kind of walked by and looked at me and then walked up to me and asked me, "What do you do?" And I said to him, "What do I do?" He said, "Yeah, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm in law enforcement." "Why?" He said, "I kind of figured that." He said, "So I just wanted to know, what did you do?" And I said, "Okay." And so we talked a little bit, and then every now and then we see each other in the gym, we talk and work out, and I hadn't seen each other in a while, and then we started reconnecting again, and we decided it was time to do something to help bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. So that's what made us. That's how we came together.
Right. So, what is your purpose for being here today?
The purpose to be here today is, as I said earlier, just a minute ago, is that we really need to help the community understand law enforcement, and for law enforcement to understand the community, because there has definitely been some not so good of a relationship between the two. And so myself and Brother Muhammad are here today to try to change that, where we can make the community feel safer and make them feel comfortable with dealing with law enforcement, and that law enforcement can feel comfortable whenever they go to a community, that if there's certain answers they're looking for, that they can get those answers and not have to worry about, are these people going to talk to us or are they not? And we just want to change the dynamic of what's been going on with law enforcement and the community.
Right.
And I'd like to add also to my reasons for being here, pretty much to piggyback off of Brother Stan's here response. See, another reason is very, very similar to his own, but we both we breathe this reality. But not taking anything away from what he does as a law enforcement person, but I ingest it deeply every day, right? So in saying that, it is a common dynamic in my life to wake up to a reality or a society that announces to me real loudly that I'm not wanted. I'm not wanted. So you have to understand that hearing that announcement was not a recent occurrence. No, we're talking about years of being exposed to the same vibration.
As in vibrations? What do you mean by vibrations?
What I mean by vibrations is the same language from a society that says to me that you are nobody, that you fit nowhere. You don't fit any place. And then the places that we have for you is strictly designated for ones who are gangbangers, who are criminals, or who have some type of probation or parole type of situation attached to them. Background.
Right.
But it's negative, though. Has nothing to do with having had build me up or cultivated me so that I can, if I'm asked the question, who do you want to be when you grow up? But the society presently in all of my life that I've lived in has announced to me that you don't fit here and you don't belong. So in knowing that and understanding that and having that particular kind of experience, then I grow up with a lot of issues. Because why? I've always felt, even I'm 50 years old, and even at 50, I don't feel as though I am, because the society that I live in America, presently in California, announces to me real loudly that I have no place.
Well, getting into the situation that happened in 1992, what led you on to the things that happened in that area of time?
In 1992, I was on a particular kind of path. It's still a journey, but a path.
Right.
See, you must understand that what happened in September of 92, there were already other factors involved to lead me to that particular action that I committed, or that I was involved in.
And what are those?
You don't, I'm going to give you some instances or some accounts. You don't wake up, or you don't come from your mother's womb wanting to be a gangbanger, right? You don't come from your mother's womb wanting to be a dope pusher. You don't come, in my case, from your mother's womb wanting to be a robber or a person engaged in thievery. You see, there has to be certain factors involved, certain dynamics involved, a certain climate that you live in an environment as well that you live in that brings you to a certain point in your life. Because, see, as I said before from the outset, if you don't, like myself, if you don't see yourself fitting anywhere in the world, then whatever is example to you in your environment, then you take on one of those or many of those characters. So if you see big time pimping in your reality, then more than likely I'm going to be a pimp. Right? If you see big time drug selling in your community, then more than likely I'm going to be a drug seller. Right? If you see big time abusing of women, because while you saw and I saw my mother literally physically abused by a male that looked like me. He wasn't white. He looked like me. So I had a lot of different examples in front of me to shape my view that made me who I am. It was a piece from here, a piece from here, and a piece from here. And then we move on with our life as an adult, because you have to understand, at 8 and 16 years old, those are years without a father. Someone to example in front of me what a father is. And by not having that, I'm hungry. I want a father.
So you turn to the streets.
The street, exactly. The street became my father. Now, my mother did something called mothering. There's a difference. In mothering, and all women who are mothers who were forced into a position to do what's called mothering, they were forced into that position because there was no man. So she took on two roles. She was the mother, and she also was the father. That's a weighty responsibility for a woman who was made in the fashion of being a woman to mother, to take care of the family, to take care of the child. But if she's left alone, for whatever reasons, then she has to assume a weighty responsibility. And so I saw my mother just trying to mother me as best as she could by providing food, a roof over my head, clean clothes, you know what I'm saying? But Mom was always out working, well, for white people, giving all of her self, her youthful self, strong, her back was strong, beautiful skin, all of her energy went to their world so that she could collect the stipend, the money to come home to make a world for her babies. See, so by the time she got home to me after working in that world, and I know that you all understand, Mama was tired. And all she could do was come in and take her shoes off, put the groceries on the table, and if she had a little strength left, fix a meal, feed us, and then hit the sack, get a couple hours of rest, and get up again, most of the time traveling under the covering of darkness so that she could be on time to work in that other world so that she could make a world for me. So I'm angry. Don't have a father there. But the male that I saw in my mother's life was abusive. He beat my mother like a man would beat a man with his fist. This man did this. I was a little 5 or 6 year old kid, snotty nose. But I knew that was my mother being harmed. Right? And in seeing her harmed, I run to his leg because I couldn't, big strong black man, I couldn't make him stop, but I had to grab some part of him. He flinged me across the room more than just one time. I was psychologically damaged and affected by that because of the fact that I couldn't defend her against the beast, right, who claimed that he loved her. But his love showed up not only to her, but also me, because I felt it in an abrasive, kind of hurtful way. And then that I couldn't defend her. I internalized a lot of rage and hatred for this human being who was acting other than himself. So at 50, I now know why I'm so angry. And the anger that I had picked up all the way from that period up until 92 was a large, great, it was greatly a part of the fuel that I needed to do what I needed to do in order to survive. So now I'm a man, a male rather, not really a man, but a male, because now in society has already told me that we don't have nothing for you. We don't have a place for you, so, since I don't have a place, and I need to eat, I need to put clothes on my back, you know what I mean? I need to put a roof over my head. And so since society has already turned against me, basically, so I had to make my own way. So I do that. Then I went away from 1992 until June of 2005. But I went away for being involved in a crime of assault on 3 police officers in the city of Orange County. I started out facing 3 life sentences. And after the trial was over, I ended up with 21.5 years in the California Department of Corrections for assault on 3 police officers in the city of La Palma. You see, I didn't plan to assault police officers. I was out of my mind, man.
what led you to actually, I can't say hatred, have the hatred? What led you to actually approach the police officers in the aggression that you did, and come at them the way you did?
Oh, partly because you have to understand, I'm not myself. I'm full of rage. So I gotta strike out at anything that I think that's a threat to me. Because I had already been in a situation where a male, was a threat to me when I was a 5 or 6 year old. And when I tried to fight and defend my mother, who was being beat, literally, it built up a kind of anger. And I felt bad because I couldn't defend my mother, who was being beaten by this person who I even heard him say that he loved my mother. So for years I carried around inside of my chest bitterness and hatefulness. So when you take bitterness and hatefulness and all of this other stuff mixed with it, believe me when I tell you, it's a wonderful fuel to formulate making you into other than yourself. So it wasn't a problem for me to pick up a gun. And I rationalized it by saying, well, I needed money. Right? Or I need a car. Because society had already done me one kind of way. I had a childhood that was like very, very painful. I didn't have a father. So now basically society in the streets now, as with many of us, black males, is now our father. So we take to the streets, we become robbers. We become abusers of women. We become pimps. We become drug sellers. Because this environment announces not only to me, but to every black male that we are not wanted. And if the dynamic has already been set up where the father has already been literally removed from the home, then that's the start of a downward spiral, you understand me, that could lead to nothing but negativity, robbery, not liking authority, hating the police, man. Huh?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What is your purpose for such a strong dislike for the police?
Again, it has to do with, the best example that I can give you is not really hating the police. Understand that. What it is, it has to do with how I'm handled as a human being. I was never handled properly.
What were some of the situations that you've been in where you were mistreated or mishandled?
Being incarcerated is a terrible, humiliating, degrading process. But even prior to being caged for 15 years, I had already been mishandled. And see, in my view, you got to understand, for law enforcement had already been framed, just like my view of males who abuse women. See, even to this day, I don't like to see men beat their women or mishandle them. Why? Because I seen my mother beaten by a male that looked like me. Law enforcement mishandled me because it used a rule that said he's one of them. Look at the book. There his picture is. Let's roll him like we roll all the others. Lump him in the, unbeknownst to them, they didn't know how that was going to affect me in 1992. Hell, I ain't in love with you, man. Why? Because you're not handling me with kid gloves. You're not showing me love. You know? Matter of fact, you are announcing to me that I don't even have a place. So when I stand up against you in broad daylight, Mr. Policeman, Mr. Judge, Mr. Banker, Mr. Governor, Mr. Human Being or Miss Human Being that has more than what I have, you are an enemy. That's my attitude. I got like that because of how I was rubbed. I can tell you what it is. And most of us who have been rubbed, they don't know the words, man. They don't have it because it chokes them up.
What was your first age when you first had your first encounter with a police officer?
About 16 years old when I first came to Southern California from Memphis, Tennessee.
And what happened then?
Oh, that's an interesting question. No, I'm going to high school. I was in the 11th grade. I was attending Woodrow Wilson High School in Long Beach, California. You all might know where that is. Oh, it's a white neighborhood, you know, because you got to understand, coming from the Midwest to Tennessee to California, it was a culture shock for a black boy like me. You know, living in what we call a cross the track kind of a situation. You know, them being over there, we living over here. But when we met, it was on and cracking, as the youngers say. You know, had nothing to do with me wanting to engage these people, but they had a rule: niggas over here, white folks over here. So when I came out here, it was a whole different reality. But anyway, I'm on the bus stop in Long Beach, California, going to school, like I normally do, and I was approached by a police unit. I didn't know why. Well, naturally, I was nervous because, you know, I mean, I seen Dragnet on TV, and that might be before your time, right? You know what I'm saying? Gunsmoke, for me, that was like police too, him and his homie Festus and all them cats, and they was doing the law enforcement. So it's like, so I'm like, well, I can't say anything. I'm waiting for them to say something, and they did say something to me. You know, like stand on the hood, come down off the bus stop and stand on the hood of the police car. Well, I mean, naturally I had to, and I did comply, and I'm wondering what's going on. And I stood in that position with my hands on the hood of this police car, and if you ever done it, with the engine running. Brother, the hood of a police car with the engine running is hot. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Hot. And I stood in that position for quite some time. And I noticed that another car was brought in. And I noticed that these people, there was a couple of females and, of course, the driver, and then they just drove by real slow, and then they was like looking at me and like, what are they looking at? So to make a long story short, to speed it up, come to find out after the initial officer that approached me finished his little, whatever his process that he does and running me, I guess, to see if I had warrants or if I was on probation or whatever, then he explained to me that this lady got her purse snatched from her. She was robbed, and that I
Fit the description of the man that committed the crime.
And I'm thinking, y'all see me with my backpack. I already told you I was on my way to school, and now I'm a robber. I fit the description of a robber of this white woman. You know. So to make a long story short, you know, they wrapped it up in the car with the lady in it that got her purse snatched. They drove off, and the officer, after he finished handling me like he handled me, he drove off. I didn't even get an apology, man. Made me late for school. Didn't even get an apology. So yeah, from that moment on, my attitude about law enforcement and how they handled me was affected. And then I started to see continued experiences of how law enforcement engage black men in Southern California. And then I started seeing accounts of it in other neighborhoods because I lived in a white neighborhood, so I had to start getting out of Long Beach and 4th Street over to 19th and Atlantic, Long Beach, 19th and 20th and over there, North Long Beach, L.A. Compton. And all I could see was when I saw these black men that looked like me being handled, my dislike of them grew.
Since 1992, after the whole thing that happened,
Yes, sir.
how have you bettered yourself as a person?
You know what? I'm glad you asked that question. One of the things that has happened for me after my release from doing 15 years in a box, or from September 92 until Father's Day of 05, is that I've had a lot of time to think about something called cause and effect. Now, I know, as I explained to you, the cause of why I went the route that I did years ago, or at least what led me up to that point. You know, standing so, I guess in my mind, courageously in broad daylight, against law enforcement and, firing on them without them even getting a shot off, right? I felt like that act to me was an act of liberation. But let me just say this. They had, them three human beings, right? They had absolutely nothing to do with my rage. Let me make that clear. But you got to understand, when you have created a dynamic that sets up a particular happening such as that, then you got to know that's what the outcome is going to be. You get a person who fearlessly stands in broad daylight and engages in law enforcement. You get a person who runs up in a post office, you understand me, and kills an innocent grandma, an innocent child. Because you've already, society, I'm saying, you got to understand, I've been tampered with. But I'm not going to sit here and I don't need your sympathy or your empathy for my actions. I take responsibility for what I did. But understand, you got to really, really, as though the ones who are in the seat of power, you got to understand that you have to really change your interactions with people if you want to get a different kind of response. Because the more you leave me unemployed, you close the door, you play games with me, you make promises that you don't keep, you have me believing in something that ain't really going to be real, and then that's all continually repetitive. Listen, eventually I'm going to wake up and say, well, I'm not going to say what I really want to say, but but you feel me.
Yeah.
You all feel me. You feel me, right? Absolutely. You are definitely a part of creating monsters, right? I know you don't believe it because it's very easy for you to separate yourself from a human being that chooses to resort to savagery. Oh, that ain't none of mine. Mine wouldn't do that. Mine is a tax-paying citizen. He's a Boy Scout. She's a Girl Scout. She loves her grandma. She cooks cupcakes on Sundays for the church. Yeah, right.
So,
Now, let me say this. The department I work for houses the largest population of persons with mental issues. The Sheriff's Department within itself has a huge mental hospital. There are so many people walking around depressed that know it and don't know it. And as law enforcement, we have tried to now, before we didn't, now we're trying to realize or find out who these people are and what has caused it. Because as Brother Muhammad says, see, you really don't know what a person has been through or what they've seen. Because like he said, nobody wakes up and say, I'm going to be a murderer. I'm going to rob banks. I'm going to join a gang. I'm going to blow up buildings. You don't wake up like that. Something has happened to you that caused you to have that kind of mentality. Now, my mentality was, I grew up in the South in the 60s, from Alabama, and saw certain things and heard certain things from law enforcement, and also knowing about certain things with the Klan. And I had a negative view of the police. I had never been, like Brother Muhammad, rubbed the wrong way, but I've seen other people. And it still affected me because I didn't appreciate it. I never forget the day that my family and I went to this store this department store back in the day. And our dad went in to get some items. Well, he was taking a very long time to come out. And so I was like, wow, it's taking him a long time. And so we was telling my mother, why don't you go in there and see what's going on? Because it's taking him a long time. And so she said, no, because I can't leave you guys because you guys are little kids. So I would say probably somewhere between maybe an hour and a half, my dad comes out. And so we asked him, what took you so long? He said, well, they said that there was a black guy, or as the word they used back in those days, a colored guy, had stole something in the store. And that I fit the description, so they were interrogating me. And so in my mind, I'm saying, did he not tell them he had a family in the car? And that they would be wondering about him? No police or no department store employee ever came out to the car to tell us that, hey, your father's in the store, there's some things going on. There was a guy that robbed the store, kind of fit his description, and we're just having a talk with him. If everything is fine, we're going to let him go. Never happened. Never had no policeman like you would see on the movies or in Leave It to Beaver, being friendly with the neighbors. Never happened. And after leaving that scene and coming to Los Angeles, California, and living in South Central LA, hearing about the reputation of LAPD, never just having, I never had any encounters with them, but just friends that I knew that had encounters with them, they were not good encounters. So my position was, because more than likely I wasn't as handled as roughly as Brother Muhammad, that my position was, I want to get in this department because I want to make some effective changes. But I will say without a doubt, had I been handled like Brother Muhammad, I probably would have never stepped in the police department. And we as law enforcement must understand that some people just don't wake up and want to do dirt or want to kill law enforcement. There is something that has happened down the line. And as law enforcement, as some officers have done, and Chief Baca has done a great job in doing this thing, of trying to interact law enforcement with the community. And it has made some inroads, but it's not made enough. And that's why Brother Muhammad and myself are here, along with you, to try to change that. We know it's not going to go over greatly. We know some people is going to be like, things are going to remain status quo, but we are definitely guaranteed assured that if we change one person's mind about how things are done, then we've done our job.
if there's something you can say to someone of a younger, generation or age, what would that thing be?
I would say that you need to request that your local law enforcement come down to your school, come to your neighborhood watch, and explain what you do and why you do. And pretty much try to understand, try to help you to make sure that you don't get caught up in anything that could cause them to handle you roughly. Now also, you got to be aware of that a lot of people in the police department come from various different backgrounds. You have some people that have never ever been around black people or Mexican people. It sounds strange, but you got different parts of the country where there are people that's like that. They never been around black people. All they go off is on what they see on the TV or movies or from what they hear from a rap song or rap video. And they put everybody in one basket. And sometimes it's the same way we as a community take and put all officers in one basket because we've seen so many of them that the few that we have encountered, we was like, wow, too bad all of them can't be like that, those couple of guys like that. But it's so few, so that's why we have such negativity. But my biggest thing is I would tell you as a young person that when you get a chance, if you can find an officer that you can literally talk to, because you will know within a few minutes that if you can talk to this guy's going to tell you the real deal, or he's just going to just like shoot you off, just going to blow you away. You know, I ain't got no time for you. You just need to just stay out of trouble, that's it.
And if there's anything you can say, Sir Muhammad, what would it be?
I was, while Brother Stan was speaking, I was thinking about that, right? The question is, what kind of message do I have for you and other youths of today that they could use? And the first thing that comes to my mind, and it really comes from a particular dynamic, meaning the present life that you are living in as a youngster. What is exampled in front of you, and who is that's exempling that thing or that conduct in front of you? See, because to have a good example in front of you as a young black, brown, red, yellow, or white male, wow, that's paramount to your chest cavity moving up and down. That's something of value, right? So, speaking from a real dynamic of most black males having that issue of being raised, not all, but it's a large happening in our community, being raised by a woman by herself, finding an example in a real, live, sane, rational, in tune with himself, no identity crisis, God-fearing man with wisdom, insight, life experience, to be a guide through this confusing maze called America or the American experience.
Well, sorry to cut you off. I believe we're running low on film.
No, the card's full.
Okay. All of them are?
No, these are them.
Okay. Pause them. And we can get back to that actual thing, that last question, then we can wrap it up. You know.
Okay.
Hey, no, I was gonna say that you wanna go change that